sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am very happy to welcome you on the Hub Sustainability track, where we will dive into one of the most challenging and struggling issues almost all hubs are experiencing today. We are about to engage in panels, keynote, workshops, and explore ways to sustain the activities of Hub across Africa. And I'm thrilled. My name is Maysam Rabet. I've met most of you. I'm the new Director of Community at AfriLabs, and I'm welcoming today our track hosts, Paul, Mbua, and Fifi Baidu. Paul is an entrepreneur, fund manager, angel investor with more than 16 years experience. Paul has worked across multiple areas of focus, including national, international organization, and he's the founder of Africa Business and Investment Summit. Paul has trained and empowered more than 6,000 young innovators in the past 15 years. He helps startups get finance, structure their businesses with innovative solutions to create unicorns. He's the founder of Zytech Hub, a co-working space and creation and acceleration space in Cameroon. And he's also founder of Zytech Corporation, a firm linking investors to entrepreneurs and building companies in Africa. Please join me to welcome Paul on stage. I'm also introducing our second track host, Fifi Baidu. Fifi has over 2 decades in technology entrepreneurship, and he's a Google Cloud certified professional cloud architect and developer. He's the founder and chief architect of Cloudport and co-founder and CTO of iSpace Foundation. He's committed to supporting startups and entrepreneurs through collaboration with renewed organizations like the Founder Institute, Google for Entrepreneurs, and the Habicutus Project. Fifi, please join us on stage. And we're missing Fifi. Paul.
Thank you, everyone. Please, can we give ourselves a round of applause for being here? Okay. So we are done with all the speeches. In the concept of this track, one of the key things we try to focus on is to be very critical as hubs, right? We can call them enterprise support organizations in general, but I'd want us to have a very frank conversation. So this session will be a panel discussion. We'll try to talk a bit about what is happening and also poke ourselves and look ourselves in the mirror to tell ourselves the truth of what is going on. So on the panel, I would want us to welcome Madame Yvonne Rivers all the way from the United States. Please, can we give her a round of applause as she comes to the panel? Also joining me on the panel is Mr. Solomon Tum, all the way from Ghana. Please, can we celebrate him as he comes? And my very good friend, Alexandra Fraser, CEO of Veridian. Please, can we give her a round of applause? And finally, but not the least, Mr. Tunde, all the way from Monster Point, Nigeria. Okay. So briefly, I would want us to just do a minute of introduction. I know your portfolios are very big. So just in a minute, can you just tell us so we have an idea of who you are, what you've been doing in the ecosystem in Africa? So start by you.
Good day. Good day, everyone. So good to be here. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I am CEO of She Phoebe Global. We were organized in 1997, and for the last 13 years, we've been serving on the continent. So we build entrepreneurial ecosystems. We teach you a pitch in 1 minute to win money. And that's a big thing for sustainability. So we're going to talk about what we've done for the past 30 years.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Solomon.
Thank you. I'm Solomon. Like you rightly said, from Ghana. I work at Reach for Change as a country manager. I'm running our operations in Ghana. Reach for Change operates in 18 countries, actually. Primarily, we support social entrepreneurs through a series of programs, either through innovation labs, depending on the stage at which they are in their development, incubation and acceleration, as well as scaling readiness programs to help entrepreneurs scale 10x. But there are four main focus areas as an organization. Youth unemployment is a big deal in Africa, especially for the markets that we are in on the African continent. So one of our major programs is designed to drive job creation for youth, of course, using entrepreneurial skills development. Women's economic empowerment is our second program area. And then, of course, you also have climate action and agribusiness, and finally, ecosystem development, where we work with other hubs and ecosystem players to drive some key standards for the industry.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. I'm a reformed venture capitalist. I started my career off in the funding space, but realized that it's no good being in the funding side if the ecosystems aren't built and your entrepreneurs aren't ready for finance. And that's what I really love doing. So for the past 10 years, I've worked really building ecosystems. I'm an angel investor as well with ABAN, and Viridian is specifically specializes in designing and developing programs and toolkits and resources to build ecosystems, whether it's with angels, hubs, which is what I'm talking about today, or even entrepreneurs. And so we've got a lot of open license toolkits and resources for hubs to use. And hopefully I'll get to share about those as we go along.
All right. My name is Tony Makaiva, founder of Monster Point. So my journey into entrepreneurship space and ecosystem building started as a co-working space primarily, and then we evolved into an innovation hub that was focused on democratizing opportunities for Africans through human capacity development, wealth creation, supporting founders, and then deploying smart capital to enable growth of the economy of the African continent. So that's our journey. So co-working space evolved into an innovation hub, and I'm happy to be here to share my story and see how we can do sustainability.
Okay, please, can we give this massive panel a round of applause for their presentation? Okay, so I want to paint the decoration of what we'll be doing today. So we've seen an explosion in the rate of enterprise support organizations in Africa, and majority has been mainly a copy from the West, right? And based on funding, right, most of them have pivoted to donor and partner funding. But some hubs have emerged to become very unique and, showing a different value proposition to the ecosystem. Some have found specialization, right? But some are still very much generalist. In the midst of the clouds, many of these hubs have gone extinct, right? And some are just a shadow of themselves because they are barely meeting the bare minimum. We face a scramble of resources, and most of us are struggling for survival. In return, the startups we support are struggling to get the right support and investment. So in this panel, I want us to discuss, in the area of sustainability, how do we reduce first the failure rate of startups? How do we get our startups, our hubs, to think differently? Are we together? So please, first, I want us to show the first question on Mentimeter so we can gather an experience of those who are in the hall, input the country you're operating in, if it's a hub or it's a DHI, DHH, whatever it is, an organization. Can we have the Slido, the first question on the board? So while that is going on, I want to ask, I'll start with you, Alexandra. I want to find out, what is your definition of hub solutions and sustainability? And just to add to that, is donor funding an indicator of lack of sustainability?
So I'm going to start with the first question. The first part of the question. I don't necessarily think donor funding is a lack of sustainability. When you actually look at all the European hubs, they are primarily funded by governments. And we don't have that luxury. We have unemployment, crises, education systems to fix, healthcare to provide. We don't have the tax base to support our governments being able to put millions of dollars or whatever currency you want into supporting innovation hubs. And so we've, as hubs, have had to look for other areas of funding. And so I think taking donors' money is not necessarily a bad thing. I think you also need to look at your business model and what you're trying to do, because donor funding might not necessarily be applicable to all types of hubs, or all types of programs or initiatives. But there is also this big push from international donors to demonstrate sustainability for our hubs, which is actually really difficult. And I think a lot of us are trying to experiment with lots of different business models, and these business models also might take a little bit of time to gain traction, and that's really where we are. But I think it's also about, we've got the donors on one side. Sustainability also we need to look at ourselves in the mirror in terms of sustainability and say, are we just doing the same thing we were doing 5 or 10 years ago, or are we really offering value to our participants and to the market and to our entrepreneurs? And I think sometimes it's quite easy to blame lack of funding instead of taking a hard look at yourselves in the mirror.
Okay, so building on that, Mr. Tunde, how do you define sustainability? How do you think as hubs, African hubs, we should define sustainability?
So I think that sustainability from an African perspective should be exactly what are you trying to solve. Because most times, if you're trying to solve a problem, if it's a problem, and the problem is market facing, you make money. I'll give an example. When I started co-working space, because there was a need. I didn't know about all these innovation hubs. So that's why I started as a co-working space. I needed an office. I was transitioning. I was leaving proper jobs to be an entrepreneur. All the money I had saved, I didn't find any building that could accommodate the kind of money I had. In Nigeria, you have to pay for a whole year. You pay a whole year rent, you buy a generator, you furnish. By the time you spend all that money, you are gone. You have not even started your business. So I said, it doesn't make any sense. So that's why I got into co-working space. I said, if I get a building, pay the 1 year rent, fix the infrastructure, and distribute the space among startups like myself, I will make money. That's how I got into the game. But I also learned a very difficult lesson. Startups don't have money. Mm-hmm. So when I started, people say startups, support startups, do this. I went to startups, I didn't see the money. I had to pivot in the middle of the business because I now saw it as a business. So I wasn't even looking for any donor funds. I saw it as a market business. And the reason is that I also did my own research. I discovered that in the area in which I occupy, there was no co-working space at all. There was none. So I opened it, and people started coming, but startups. So my own view is that if you're going to, what is sustainable, primarily is what the market can pay for. That is the primary business. That means the unit economics must make sense. After that, you can now begin to look at other sources of revenue to impact probably your environment. I got into programs 5 years after I ran a co-working space. I didn't get any donor funds for 5 years. After the 5th year, and there was this why I got into donor funds. I had a crisis. There was NSAS in Nigeria at a point, and they almost damaged my infrastructure. So I started thinking about supporting people who are underprivileged through my capital development. So okay. I think those are very important things that people need to pay attention to.
Okay, so Mr. Solomon, let me pick your brain. What would be your approach towards sustainability?
Thank you. I think, so I share very much in what they both have shared. I just want to add a little twist to it. In the context of hubs and enterprise support organizations, sustainability could also mean or imply a strategic reliance on donor funds. So just to let you know that no, relying on donor funding is not an indicator that you are not sustainable, but it has to be strategic. I have seen hubs go in for donor funds, and that has been their downfall because they didn't have the capacity to absorb that kind of funding and all the requirements that came with that funding opportunity. So it is important that as hubs figure out how to fund their programs, they also make sure that the funding they are going in for actually aligns with what it is that they are set out to do and also have the capacity to actually use the grant for its intended purpose. That's how I would take sustainability. And then from the solutions point of view, it's also about having clearly defined goals, clearly defined programs with a very clear impact results chain. Oftentimes, you see hubs running projects, and that is taken as programs. I told you about Reach for Change running programs in a space of economic empowerment for women as well as job creation for youth, etc., etc. These are major interventions that are solving clear problems with clear results. So the incubation bits you do to support somebody with entrepreneurial skills to create jobs then becomes a project at that point, because at some point that incubation program will end.
Definitely.
And a lot of hubs focus on projects and not programs. So they don't have major interventions. And that is what creates that downfall and struggling that they see.
But don't you think it's from where they learned what they learned? So while thinking about that, I'd love us to invite another member of our panel, Leslie Donna Williams. Please, can we give her a round of applause as she joins us? Okay. So what's your take on that? Because we've been talking about sustainability for a number of years now, right?
Yeah.
Telling, African hubs, enterprise support organizations to really be sustainable. But somebody from Kenya or Rwanda, what should be his thinking about what sustainability is all about?
First of all, any entrepreneur, any enterprise, any hub, any whoever, you need to be looking at how you're going to survive whether anyone gives you a dime or not. And if you get that dime or that dollar or that 100 or that million, that's a seed that you plant, utilizing the programs, utilizing the projects, so you can make that seed grow. I say all the time, and I think what you refer to it, you need to look at into the mirror on what you're providing, and don't wait for not necessarily a handout, but use what you do have in your hand, and you have something yourself now. Look at your IT, your IP, your intellectual property. I see a lot of hubs don't realize all that you have. And the first thing I do when I work with someone new, and just to give it a little more complex, I've been in the United States, I'm from the African diaspora, I've been doing work on the continent for the last 13 years. We are a registered business here in Rwanda as well as in Kenya. I have teams who work for She Global here on the continent. And we always will go with the asset. What have you done before? What are you looking to do? And you do have to have objectives. You've got to have a mission, and it has to fit into the programming and what the funding is. And it's like a well-oiled moving machine. You are a business owner, because that's the key thing. I see a lot of times NGOs will come to me and whatever and say, we want funding. No, you need to look at how you kind of mobilize what you have to really make it spread. So whether you get that donor funding, whether you get input, whether you win money with grants and so forth with that, it's got to be a strategy. It has to be purposeful. It has to be for us to fund all the things you want to do. It's not going to happen overnight. So if you're just starting, look at what money you do have and then set a goal. First year, third year, fifth year, 10th year. This is where we're going to be, but you have to be target and laser focused. You cannot be off from it. And that's what I say for us. It's about people. It's about the process. It's about profits. Yes, the greatest people have the greatest systems, because I see a lot of times people are turning around. You keep talking about this and this, but what's your system to success? You have to plan that step by step by step. And be careful for what you're really getting back when you talk about outcomes and measures, because funders are looking for outcomes and measures. Make sure you can document that, but as well as how you can grow. When someone gives you I keep going back to that dime, that dollar, that 100, triple it, return on investment. You do that, you will always be around. Otherwise, you will disappear.
So people, process,
And profits.
and profit. So let's say you've been working with people. So would Scan, I want to know, can you rate how sustainable your hub is or your organization? And it will be important, we'll get some contributions from the crowd. But based on your experience, how has it been in terms of working with hubs, maybe mentoring younger hubs, in terms of their level of sustainability? How do you think they approach this topic?
Sure. So I got involved in hub development around 2005 and set up Impact Hub Johannesburg in 2010, and now I'm the CEO of the Smolokong precinct. So I think, there's different generations of hubs. I think for those of us who set up hubs in the last, 15 years ago or so, it was really that pioneering generation where we're kind of navigating without a torch, with making up this business model that's still not 100% defined. But I think we are seeing different waves, so there was like you said, bootstrapping, which a lot of us did. I think, remember back then, my desks were doors with cages as the legs. We just pulled things, resources together. Then there was this wave of a lot of corporates setting up hubs, and especially banks looking for fintech solutions. And this year we've seen two major corporate-funded and corporate-run hubs and incubators shut down. And I think, for me, if you're not clear about what is your why and when, how the pain point is solving, it will always be a sideline corporate social investment project which isn't sustainable. And now with the current sort of emerging generation, which we're involved with ADIBNet, the Africa-European Digital Innovation Bridge Network, we are learning, getting inspiration from the EU models of what a DIH looks like, but we're in this process of defining it for an African context.
Yes.
And this generation is almost looking at this consortium approach where government or corporates is not really your partner, your funder, your service provider, but actually in partnership with you and co-designing and co-owning it. So the structure shifts, the way of working and collaborating shifts, and there is sort of like an end point around what you're trying to solve. So with us in Johannesburg, we've got a smart cities focus, so partnering around with corporates and government to set up our DIH with them as co-owners, if you like, of this hub. So
Okay.
the models start shifting.
Thank you very much. So just looking at the active pool, we see that half of the hubs or the organizations here are struggling with sustainability, right? You'd see 3, that's the highest, 43%, and 29% almost, just still surviving. So in concrete steps, what are the 4 key things? So we start with Alexandra. What are the 4 key things would you tell a hub manager, a hub founder, or a hub should do in order for them to be sustainable? What are those 4 key indicators that they should attack for them to be sustainable?
I think, just 4, Paul. So I think, I often think about hubs and what we tell entrepreneurs, and I think we need to kind of practice what we preach often. So I think one of the key things is that you need to be lean, and you can often run light programs or light versions of new programs and test new products fairly easily and fairly cheaply in the market. And I think that's something that we should adopt in terms of kind of...
So being very lean?
Lean, yeah, exactly. And kind of developing MVPs of kind of minimal viable programs. Is this something, especially if you're moving into kind of new programs in terms of specialization or you trying to shift things, so kind of adopt that kind of testing approach that we tell our startups to use all the time. I think the other thing is to also really have a look at what are your costs? how your cost structured, how do they pay for themselves, what are the different business models, how could you get your different assets and your different, whether it's your IP or it's your human resources or it's your physical space, how can you really leverage that and get people to pay you for it? And then, you know, I think the reality is some of us do need to also look at donor funding, and that you might want to think about, you know, are you also at risk if you have one donor versus multiple donors? I think that's also a huge issue. And also thinking about how do you diversify your income streams.
So definitely how you diversify lean, which means minimum viable programs, doing what we, we preach to our startups. Solomon, based on your work, what do you think startups, hubs should do, right, in terms of sustainability? That taking home from this conference, they would, okay, if I do these things, then I'm seeing sustainability on the other side of the river.
Right. So
Struggle with
I'm getting to that point.
okay.
So we can debate this program angle the whole day. But just to say that if you have a program like you are saying, granted, most of them are also not multi-year. And I'm speaking from our experience and our work with hubs. They tend to deliver short-term projects. So GIZ has some funding to support women in tech, 3 months, and then you find all these hubs rushing to take that 15,000 euros to run a 3-month program. Alexandra has some small grants to provide, and you find 50 hubs applying for that pot of money. If you have a multi-year program, you give yourself an opportunity to build a significant amount of unrestricted funding that can cover your operations, for example. So apart from running lean, like she said, making sure that you have a sustainable model, et cetera, there's a strategy part of it. If you keep going in for short-term projects, it hampers your sustainability journey. So you are better off focusing on multi-year programs where you know that the funding you have is covering you for 3 years, 4 years, and then you can now spend time fundraising for the next 2 or 3 years whilst you implement what you have currently.
Okay,
so that's one
Alexandra,
approach.
you can jump in.
Yeah, I think that's nice. That's a luxury though, because sometimes, you know, your cash flow is constrained, and and your new hub, you've got to go for those short programs where you don't need 3 years of audited financials and figuring out the procurement system. So sometimes you need those short programs to build your track record.
I agree.
Yeah.
I am not against that. But he's asking, in my experience, what do I think has been the problem? A lot of them have been around for a while. And where they are, they've had opportunities to do better. But working with them, you realize that there are opportunities they never took advantage of.
Okay,
And
so
one of them is the fact that opportunities to run multi-year projects, sometimes it's about collaborating with others. You don't have to do it all by yourself.
Definitely. So looking at the Mentimeter, we were asking the question, right? Leslie, working with hubs, how do you think about, because we are seeing a new wave in terms of hubs turning into consultancies, offering products, services, and we're having almost half, you know, offering between 1 to 6 products or services. What's your take on that?
Look, I think one needs to diversify your risk as a hub. You know, so keep your eye on the market. We tell our entrepreneurs to do that all the time. So you're right, practice what you preach. And that will allow you to pivot and create new products and services. I think, you know, one of the things we forget about as hubs is that, yes, we need to be program driven, but quite often donor money is required to run a lot of programs. There are certain ones that you can sell as a product, especially to corporates, but you're also developing assets within your hub that you can actively go and sell. You know, so for me, I'm really about like creating this blended finance approach where we use grant financing where required for the developmental cycle, but actively start extracting assets to start commercializing and running with it. So it does mean on the downside that we need to be multifaceted and multi-skilled as hub creators and hub teams, but there is always that blend for me, like be have a heart of impact, but a mind for commerce. For me, that's
So,
the
so,
thing.
so Tunde, we have the issue where all of us hubs are trying to, it's as if we're replicating each other in terms of products and services, right? So as a hub, how do you stand out in terms of creating a product or creating a service?
Sure. Oh, sorry.
So what I found out from my experience, you have to solve pain points.
You have to,
Solve pain points. People are trying to do vitamins and candies. If you solve a pain point, you make money. I'll give you an example. The reason why I'm saying is that I ran my hub. So what I did was when I saw that startups were struggling, I moved to corporates. During the pandemic, I made more money in the pandemic than pre or post pandemic. How did I do that? Because when I saw that startups don't have money, I pivoted. As I built my co-working space to attract multinationals. I invested in infrastructure. I borrowed money to do that. But I saw it as a business. I told a lot of people were going for donor funds. I said, you have to run this thing as a business. The business performance must be looked at. Can this thing sustain itself? If I don't get money for anybody, how am I going to survive? I'm a married man. I have children. I'm not going to do good for all people and then my family go hungry.
Definitely.
So I was very frank with myself. I suffered doing that, but in the pandemic, when most of the players were going down, I had money because I had long-term contracts that I signed with multinationals. They didn't just pull out. Even if they're going to pull out, they have to pay you some money. And they didn't pull out. And then my cost was low because everybody was at home, we were running lean and all that stuff. So basically what I would say is that most people have to solve pain points. Don't go for, when you talk about we are trying to replicate solutions, for instance, I'm into learning. There is a problem in learning globally.
Sure.
Go for that problem and solve it.
Okay.
And then you make money.
Thank you very much. I'm moving to you. There's this balancing act, right, that startups hubs are trying to do, where they are trying to balance the vision and the resources they have, right? You have a very big vision, but your resources are very small. And now we have development partners in the mix, corporates who are launching accelerator programs. So we are like, we have to partner with you, but you guys are already in a field of work. So how do hubs approach this, and what should be their strategy looking at the new wave in terms of development partners and also corporates getting into acceleration and incubation?
First of all, you need to stay true to your mission. Never get off your mission. But if I can say, when you ask the question of what are the 3 things that hubs can take away from today, I say, and because you'll hear me going back to building the foundation of who's running the hubs. Because if you really don't have that capability and the capacity and all of that. So the first thing, the first key, I would say 3 keys to success. You can write this down. Number 1, what is your SWOT analysis? The people you're working with, what's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And I hone in on that because when COVID happened, the people who survived were the ones who knew there were threats. They had prepared the best they could because, there was unknown of coming that. So when you're running your hub, with your team, with your people, with your process, with your profits, what's your SWOT analysis with that? The second thing I look at is really with the key performance indicators is exactly what do you need to do to make sure it's success. I have another, I guess I'll call a system. I call it my 1-minute business plan. You can call it a lean canvas or whatever. But the 1-minute business plan is to spend at least 1 minute asking yourself, what are the products and services you are offering? Who are you providing it to? What's the solution? Where are you going to find them? And then how much money you're going to make? You've got to track out all of that. Crunch the numbers. Your numbers are your key. Now, as you say, other people getting into the accelerators, incubators, and whatever, collaborate. Use that because most of the corporates who are funding incubators and accelerators, they're not grassroots where the hub is. So use your IP, what's your intellectual property, align with that. So it'll be a win-win on both sides. But you have to come to the table with the plan. Don't allow them to come with the plan. So come with your plan because they're going to ask the question, how can we work together? Don't let that be a blank statement. Tell them this is how we can work together because you've already figured it out, relatable to what they can provide to you so you can provide the solutions to your hub and sustainability and work on a long-term plan to be partners. We've just signed an MOU with AfriLabs, with what we do in Kenya, Rwanda, and the United States, whatever, because we have an African diaspora with the United States that we've got African Americans who are willing to put money into Africa. So we find the money. We find the money. So we follow the money.
Okay, so we have to follow the money. I don't know if mics are available. We want to hear from my audience who are experts, hubs. What have you done in terms of balancing the act of your vision, your mission, and also your resources? So please, anyone who has succeeded or is trying to implement that in their organization, what has been your plan or your strategy so far in terms of balancing your vision, your mission with the resources you have, so you don't lose track of yourself? Because we've seen within the last 5 years, many hubs that started as incubators, now they are consulting firms. They are no longer doing incubation.
So,
Please present yourself, then you go over with your presentation.
hello?
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Tochukwu Chukweke. I run a makerspace in Nigeria called Clinton L Innovation Center. So I have a question, but I'll make the comment before the question. The reality in Africa is that most donor funding is predefined. You can't change that. You either accept it or you go. So, and hubs, even if it doesn't align, so that's part of what's happening. So hubs are now redefining their mission, their vision to be able to align with the predefined programs and projects of donors. So what we do in our hub is we have a mission and a vision as a makerspace. And then we have a program. For instance, we have a program that we call Engineering for Industry, which we feel that the challenge with donor funding is that most times donor priorities are not the actual problems that Africans have. But you still have to find a way to manage that. So what I do is, when I apply for donor funds and I get the funds, I adapt that funding or that program to be able to meet the requirements of the donor while also achieving my hub's mission
your
and vision.
Interest. Okay, thank you. Any other contribution? We have somebody at the back. Yes?
Okay, my question, can I ask my question now or
Yes,
later?
no, your question will be answered. Let's
Okay.
you answer your question.
So my question is, so you talked about having long-term programs and projects, not just short-term donor funded. So I wanted to ask, could you share with us, because we are here to learn, which donors do you know who are willing to accept your own hub's long-term projects and work with you, just to help us to learn about that? Thank you.
Okay,
That's the
so-
gentleman
Okay,
next to
so
you.
I think anybody in the panel
Okay.
will answer, but after her,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Candide Legued. I'm from Togo in West Africa. Unfortunately, there is no translation. I'm a francophone, but I'm going to
You can
try
speak
to.
in French, it's okay, I'll translate for them.
Okay.
Or they
But
translate, yeah.
I'll I may continue in English if you can follow me. Okay. I just want to share my experience. I am a founder of a business incubator for women enterprises, women startups. We started in 2015, and we started with a UNDP funding for 3 years to set up the incubator and run the incubator. But after 3 years, then the subvention, the loan, the funding stopped, okay? And I have to find another source of funding from Holland, for another 3 years. But since then, so since 2020, we have been trying to self-fund ourselves. By doing what? We have a program, we have a business model, we did impact study to see whether what we have done for 5 years is really what we are intended to, we have intended to do. But we found out that it does not really respond to the vision that we have set up at the beginning. So what we did is define our business model, and then we started answering wherever we see a call for application or project or whatever. Then we answer. And this is how we've been sustaining, our activities till now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Please, can we give her a round of applause? Okay, so before we go to the next two that their hands are up, so just to answer that, we have two issues. So one is funders come with a pre-planned, this is what they want, these are the key indicators, these are the traction that they want, right? And secondly, you have some hubs that take a lot of time in terms of getting proposal writing now. Hubs have turned to project management offices, right? So what would be your answer to that? So just go like...
If I could quickly address the first one regarding, never lose sight of your vision. You cannot mold yourself into a square peg if you're round. You can, but will it fit with your purpose of what you're doing? And I think the second one relating to, she mentioned she had funding and for 3 years and whatever. You've got to plan ahead. If you know the funding is going to be for 3 years, you don't wait until 3 years to start thinking, what are we going to do and how are we going to go? We're talking about sustainability. And that's why I go back to your SWOT, your 1 minute business plan and whatever. You've got to really know these numbers and how you can get best from that, or else you're going to be in a lurch when suddenly oh, wow, next month our funding stopped. Now we got to start your programs. Because to me, that's a disservice to who you're serving.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Solomon?
Right, thank you. So donors come with predefined set of programs. That is true in most cases. Once you have little room for amendment, like she said, you need to ask yourself, what is your core? And how do I balance that with the expectations of the funder? If these are the predefined sets, do I fit in that category? Can I do this and do this well? Then go for it. Otherwise, then don't spend time there. Find something else. And like I mentioned from the beginning, just like we support startups, if you have somebody in a university who has a brilliant idea, you support that person through a series of programs. You just don't throw grants at them.
Sure.
You worry them. And the hubs are also in that same situation. Most of the hubs are startups. So if you don't have the capacity to absorb what you can't, go with somebody, collaborate. Otherwise, find what it is that you can do.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
I think it's also about partnerships. Things do change, unfortunately. Sometimes the same pot of money is also funding all foreign, like international development. So there's a war in the Ukraine, and there are all sorts of different things, and that has knock-on impacts, and that's something that none of us can really control, big macro events. But I think it's also about relationships. It's about building relationships with potential funders and understanding what they are also looking for and where there's an alignment. And it's also okay to sometimes say no as well. And not every donor or not every organization is going to be the right match for your hub and what your vision is. So I think that's also really important.
So as we match investors with startups, we also match...
Exactly.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm like, if I have to write another proposal for some organization, which is like a black hole, I've actually just decided, I don't care how sexy that RFP is, I don't care how many $1 million that they put on the bottom. Life is too short to write proposals because it goes into a black hole and you never hear anything back. So
great. I love that. Life is too short to write proposals. Okay.
To write bad proposals.
Okay, to write bad proposals. Yeah. Okay. So we'd want to have the fourth question. Leslie? Yes.
Sorry, sure. if I may.
Okay, after?
If I may.
Yes. Yes.
Sure. I mean, his question really hit home, and it kind of like answer kind of crosses over. As a hub, our job is to be curators of ecosystems. And once you know the purpose and what you're trying to solve for, you then need to curate the right partners to come on board. If you're not clear about your purpose, your hub is going to fall apart. It may not happen today or tomorrow, but within 3 to 5 years, it will fall apart. You can't be all things to everyone. And initially, donors are rigid when they come on board. And like you said, it is about relationship. The more you're able to, number one, negotiate upfront where and how you can adapt certain elements in the contract, that's realistic. You have to be realistic about what you can deliver on. And when you prove that you are able to deliver, then donors, funders, and even massive organizations tend to be a bit more open to adapting to what is realistic. But right now we have a problem with that. A lot of hubs basically punch above the waist and then don't deliver. So funders are stuck in this hard place where they know that certain systems they need to see. They also have their own KPIs, but it's a constant conversation. And you cannot wait until the end of reporting period to communicate with them again. You need to build that relationship and have regular feedback and adjust in partnership with them. And I'm happy to take the conversation further offline.
Yes.
Okay, I think my position is always this: identify what value you're bringing to the table. People would pay for what they find valuable. I personally don't think that, maybe because I've not applied for donor funds severally, I've always tried to run it sustainably from scratch, but I'm firmly of the opinion that identify value, let people, once you can communicate value properly, you are going to attract money. I don't, because I've raised debt capital, I've raised capital, I understand that when people see value, they will give you money. I think most people need to focus on creating value. Once there's significant value, over time, people would respond to you appropriately. Any other thing is not sustainable.
Okay, thank you. So while waiting for the Mentimeter to come up, I would want to ask, what are your top revenue streams as an organization or as an enterprise support organization? So from the crowd, so just give us your top 3. And if somebody has repeated what you have to say, please, you don't repeat it. Thank you. Any hands? We want to know your top 3 revenue streams as an organization or as a hub.
Guys, GS8's in the room. I'm sure some of you are funded by GS8.
Please, donor funding is not part of that list. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George Wayne from Kenya, Nakuru Box. I think just to respond to the question, our top 3, now that you've subtracted 1, I will say the first is co-working space. And of course, consultancy is our second. I think part of the conversation that we're having, just allow me.
We just want the list, then we will go now because we are short of time, right? So we'd want, just give us the list. We would know what is in details.
We do conferencing and event management.
We're not getting you very well.
We're doing conferencing and event management as part of revenue.
Okay, event management, conferencing. We have consulting. Who else wants to? So the lady behind. Yeah.
Real estate.
My name is Martin Olo from FabLab Winam. Majorly fabrication.
Okay, so fabrication is like your key revenue source, yes?
Hi, I'm Amy from Impact Hub Accra. So real estate, that's a source of revenue for us at Impact Hub Accra.
I didn't get it?
Real estate.
Real estate.
Real estate, please, can you explain that to us, please?
So typically in Accra, Ghana, rent for an office space is quite on the high end. So we build and sublet.
Okay, so more of rental spaces, co-working.
Yes, tailored
okay.
to the company.
Yes.
Bonjour, si je peux parler en français.
Bien sûr.
Je suis Asma NFR, je suis la directrice de la fondation Orange Digital Center du groupe Orange. C'est vrai, il y a une vraie problématique de budget. Nous, en tout cas, pour le budget des Orange Digital Center, qui sont des centres physiques qui vont de la formation jusqu'à l'ouverture de la start-up et l'investissement dans la start-up, donc on est sur toute la chaîne de valeur. Ce qui est bien chez nous, c'est que Orange met 70% du budget au niveau des ODC. Donc, nous sommes présents sur 17 pays. Nous avons 17 centres physiques au niveau des capitales, mais aussi dans les régions au niveau des universités. C'est vrai qu'il faut des bailleurs de fonds avec nous pour pouvoir toucher plus, former plus, mais les bailleurs de fonds savent quelle est la vraie problématique
Ok, je
aujourd'hui.
voudrais demander qui finance les ODC.
Les ODC, à 70%, c'est le groupe Orange. C'est la filiale elle-même, c'est nos structures physiques à nous. Donc nous déployons, il y a celui du Sénégal qui fait 6000 mètres carrés. Donc c'est des centres qui sont totalement gratuits, ouverts à tous, qui vont de la formation. Donc, mais la vraie problématique aujourd'hui, tout à l'heure vous parliez des bailleurs de fonds et de répondre à la demande des bailleurs de fonds. Les bailleurs de fonds demandent la même chose. Finalement, c'est la formation au numérique, c'est l'employabilité, c'est la création de l'écosystème entrepreneurial dans les pays. Le but ultime de tout ça, c'est créer plus d'emplois et donner la main aux Africains pour qu'ils prennent le lead sur leur pays. Donc, je pense qu'on est tous d'accord sur l'objectif final.
Bien sûr.
Maintenant, c'est la manière de faire et comment le construire ensemble. Merci.
Et ça, c'est une vraie question parce qu'on devrait savoir si l'Orange... Please, can we try to add to this poll so we get if you have more options in terms of revenue stream that we can draw from? We had another hand behind. Yes, behind.
Good afternoon, or I guess it's still morning. So I'm coming from city of Tampere, Finland. So we actually built a model where we based on 3 Ps. So it's a public, then there is a private, so it comes a rental side and the projects. And meaning public, that public sector basically gives the fundamental base, and then who runs the hub builds on top of that.
Okay, so that is good. Okay, last, before we come to the panel. Please, there's free internet, so we can scan the code. And we want to pick your mind. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Kweku Ifa. I run a robotics company, and what we do for funding is we resell electronics and robotics components for makers and maker spaces. So it's a great source of funding for us.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to the panel as we close, what would be your key takeaways and what should be the additional revenue streams hubs should start thinking about? We'll start with you, Leslie.
Sure, maybe I'll start with revenue stream just because it's something I haven't heard. We have something called the Studios Collective at Simolokong Precinct. And it's basically where we'll go out and get work and then subcontract our entrepreneurs who've been through our program. So we trust their quality. We take responsibility for the quality of delivery. The entrepreneurs leverage our brand, but then and piggyback off our brand while we grow their brand. They're then comfortable having access to market, and we've done that with some local and international projects with great success, and we're expanding that part of our business. I think for me, the key insight I want to share is
engage consultants. As a business owner, sometimes you can't see it. Engage consultants. As a business owner, sometimes you can't see it. And I use consultants, for instance. Now I'm currently having a consultant that's looking at my business because I'm transitioning. Try to bring third-party people inside that understands where you're going. They look at it from an external point of view and tell you that adjustment you need to make. Because most big organizations truly use consultants to transition. And finally, I think that infrastructure as a service is something that most ops have to look at. It has sustained me for a while. I think you should look at it, particularly because post-pandemic, flexibility and options that co-working space offers have become more attractive than they were pre-pandemic. So that could be an opportunity for ops to bring. Then also, finally, we have a document that I prepared for this presentation that is detailed revenue streams, people processes, how you can, all the things you can do to improve your business. Worked on by myself and my consultant that I feel like I make available for people to download and look at it. It's on our website, monsterpoint.co, and you can just download it for free, and maybe it will be valuable to you. Thank you.
So thank you for providing a free resource.
In terms of sustainability, I think it's important to think about as well what you don't do, and have a clear idea of what you can do and what you can't do, and you can look at your strengths and weaknesses for that, because I think sometimes trying to be all things to everyone doesn't allow you to really focus and build a team or a center of excellence. But that doesn't mean that you have to have gaps. It means that there's room for partnerships, and partnerships are absolutely key. Especially if you've got a small team, have those trusted service providers, whether it's startups, other hubs, key partners, then you can take on a lot more work. So that's something else. And it almost becomes then like mutual biz dev because if you write someone into a proposal, they'll probably write you into a proposal as well.
Okay, Solomon.
Thank you. So on the sustainability side of things, I think it's also important that the hubs look internally. All right. Alexandra talked earlier on about something I said that was more of a luxury, in that some of these hubs don't even have their 3-year financial statements and things like that. But you also go down to check, and some of them have been in existence for more than 3 years. So why aren't you keeping your books? The discipline must start internally. So from governance to ethics, having a model that is sustainable and staying true to that plan, like they've all said, I think is one way to go in terms of survival. Now, on the revenue side of things, touching on what Tunde shared about infrastructure as a service, that is true. Using Reach for Change as an example, we don't have that infrastructure, so we won't do co-working spaces and things like that. However, there are other aspects of the business you can also leverage on. So over our 14 years existence, we've built a lot of capacity in the area of M&E. So aside our own programs, we also deliver monitoring and evaluation as a service to other projects across Africa, because they don't have that strength internally. And because we focus so much on social impact, we also are able to communicate that impact well. So development communications or impact comms is something we do. So we then also offer comms as a service. So if you don't have the infrastructure, you can also look within. What else are you good at, and how can you leverage on that? But at the end of the day, it must tie into your core so that you don't veer off.
So to always being in the line of what are you good at, and also looking at your model, your systems. Are you keeping financial records? Are you even running a proper organization?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that I told Alexandra that it's sad. Some of them could have been where they are supposed to be today, but they are not there because if you look back, there are things which were not done. It's not because they are new.
How many hubs do we have, enterprise support organizations? Please just raise your hand.
Training for other people in the hub and outside the hub, from SME training to investment and export readiness training. I'm an AGOA advisor, so we tie into that. We even teach leadership development, so outside of SMEs who we serve. And another unique, innovative thing that we do, we sort of call it a franchise in the US or whatever, that essentially if someone comes through our training and they're really growing, but they don't have sort of the infrastructure to run it, we are sort of will get basically a management fee that they'll percentage per year on their assets and revenue, because it's like helping them to grow their business with that. So that's a regular fee annually can add up.
And I think that's a very interesting discussion. When we look at, for example, the AfriLabs Academy, we're thinking about how do hubs scale, right? And the impact hub model has always been, right, like the reference point to that. What do we think about specialization? Because we've been hearing specialization. Is it part of sustainability? Maybe some few hands. Is specialization part of sustainability? Or we can just decide to be generalist technicians? Yes, somebody's hand is up. Okay, you start with Daniel, then you come to him.
Thank you. I think it's a part of sustainability, because if you achieve it to have a special topic and you sit on this topic, then nobody can so easy take this from you, no matter what the revenue streams are.
Okay.
So I was about to say basically what you just said. I would say that specialization will depend on the ecosystem where you are developing your activity. And in my specific case in Gabon, we specialize in digital economy because that was a huge push from the government to diversify the economy. And we knew that a great stream of revenue will come from this area. So when you specialize, you're attracting all the funder, and as he just mentioned, you develop capabilities that make you more sustainable over the time.
Okay, so who can just jump on this? As hubs, we produce a lot of data, but who has tried to turn his data to a data mining, business where you can sell that data, because we provide it free to development organizations. So who can talk on that? How do hubs start looking at, making use and monetizing their data?
So I think that to monetize data, you have to leverage technology. And what I mean is that, so I'll give an example. There's a project, because there's a project that I had to work on that was a developmental organization funded project that had to do with education. Now, the individuals that got the project initially were trying to use manual systems to capture the experiences of learners across board. But it was too disconnected. So we came in and then used technology to manage the operations. Through that model, we could extract data. So even though they initially didn't see data as a value point, now with that data set, you can now draw insights on what to do and what not to do. And that's very important for all
Thank
to
you.
be able to
Anyone wants to join before we close?
Very quickly, we have a research and data intelligence team at Simologong Precinct. And that's really been amazing for forming partnerships with government and other stakeholders. So we create ecosystems on a topic. They trust us because there's data, but we are at that point now where we're influencing policy because of it.
Okay, so
I would say when you use the data that you have, find out who wants to buy that, and who wants to buy that are funding organizations. You have USAID, you have Prosper Africa, you have a lot of different things who are US instruments who are serving Africa. They need to do their details, and they want to know what's the percentage of people graduating from the hubs, what's their assets of 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. You have it if you collected it, and make sure you do, and then that's basically, you become a provider for that, and that's money.
So the final words, value-added services, right? So as hubs, that should be our focus. We should think about adding value and also question ourselves, why do we do the things we do? Why is your door still open? I always ask myself that, why is my door still open? Why do I still exist? And those are questions we need to keep asking ourselves. So we've eaten up our time, and I want to thank our panelists. Please, can we give them a round of applause? Can we give them a round of applause? Okay, thank you very much. We keep on the discussion. So after this, we would have a community where we'll be talking more about hub sustainability management, and we're working on a hub sustainability and management guide. But before that, thank you very much. Please, can we, where's the photographer? Can we take a picture with my panelists? Then we'll love everybody to